Forum CSIS. And now your host, international business lawyer David Day.
Well, good afternoon. This is Pacific Forum's Issues and Insights. And our special guest today is Mr. David Santoro, who is a Senior Fellow for Non-Proliferation and Disarmament at Pacific Forum CSIS. And David, it's nice to have you on the program again.
Thank you for having me.
And you know, this title you've got here, Senior Fellow for Non-Proliferation and Disarmament. Could you translate that into English for me? What does that really mean?
Okay. Well, non-proliferation is basically the activity that is meant to prevent the development of nuclear weapons by states and others.
Okay.
Disarmament is the process by which states and others dismantle nuclear weapons.
All right, so basically you are an expert on nuclear disarmament and the proliferation of nuclear weapons, if I could put it.
Basically, in English, that's what it is, okay. Yes.
Good, all right. Well, you know, with that as an introduction, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to be talking about today is the issue of whether or not we have a nuclear arms race underway here in the Asia-Pacific region. We're going to be talking about some of the broader implications of what's been going on with North Korea. This will be a different kind of a show than, or media presentation than perhaps you've seen anywhere else, and that's because we've got David Santoro's expertise here with us to look at some of these nuclear issues in a much broader context and look at their ramifications here in the region. This show is coming at you live, and you can join the conversation by calling us at area code 808-296-5467. And those of you who are watching us on ThinkTech's live video stream, if you look carefully at the background behind David Santoro and myself, you may recognize an urban skyline that is a little bit unusual to you. You probably haven't seen that before, and that is downtown Pyongyang. And no, we're not coming at you live from Pyongyang. We are here deep in the belly of the beast in the Pioneer Plaza at ThinkTech's new studio. But we thought it would be good for you to kind of see this. See what Pyongyang looks like, and so that's the background here if you're watching us on the video stream. Now, David, let's jump into this a little bit by looking at the North Korean nuclear situation as we know it to be today. And there is a controversy. It looks like the president and the director of the Central Intelligence Agency have been contradicting each other as to the missile capability of North Korea. Have I misinterpreted that, or do I see it incorrectly? Or
no, I mean that you're right. There's been disagreements or misunderstandings among intelligence agencies as to the capability and the reach that North Korean nuclear missiles.
Okay, so for our audience, in case folks you've missed this, the president has said he doesn't believe that North Korea has the nuclear missile capability. Am I correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and the director of the Central Intelligence Agency testifying before a congressional committee has said, what, David? What did he say?
That he believes with moderate confidence that North Korea has that capability, that it is able to actually put nuclear warheads on its missile capabilities.
All right, so let's set aside that dance of the Goonie Birds or clash between the White House and the defense or the intel professionals for a moment, David. You studied this situation quite a bit. I realize you don't have access to classified information, but you are an expert on nuclear developments, nuclear proliferation and disarmament. What's your personal view of this?
Well, I mean, as my boss, Ralph Kossa, always says, when it comes to North Korea, we're really all guessing because it's probably one of the most difficult intelligence targets, and there's very little information, and everything that we know about North Korea has to be taken with a grain of salt. Now, having said that, it seems to me that despite the fact that North Korea has been developing its nuclear program and missile capabilities, it would be far-fetched to think that it has the capability to actually put nuclear warheads on its missiles and be able to use them, let alone reach the United States effectively.
Okay, that's a comforting statement, David. But clearly, you have a difference of opinion with the director of the CIA, James Clapper.
I mean, again, to be clear, I think we should be worried about it. I think every time that a nation makes nuclear threats, because that's really what North Korea has been doing to its neighbors and to the United States, this has to be taken seriously. But if you look at it from a distance or try to put the problem into perspective, we have to acknowledge that it seems that North Korea does not have a full-fledged nuclear arsenal able to put Washington and others at threat.
Okay. North Korea recently, a few months ago, successfully put a partially operative satellite into orbit. Yes?
Yes.
So some primitive guidance system in order to accomplish that. Yes?
This is definitely a significant step taken by North Korea. It has been testing missiles for the past few years. Some of them have been failures, but increasingly over the years, it has made significant improvements. And this test was successful because it managed to put a satellite into orbit.
Two things come to mind, David. One is that, oftentimes I feel that our experts, they compare our U.S. weapons technology of the 21st century with some of the rising rogue or otherwise nations and say, well, no way, Jose, they're not there yet. And when in fact, if we go back to the early 1950s, in the beginnings of the U.S. guided missile program, there were all kinds of blow-ups on the launch pad and rocket failures, but you have 15 failures and one success, and that one success could take out a city like Tokyo or whatever.
I think you're right, and that's why, as I usually say, I don't think we should be apologetic, and we should take this threat seriously. But again, I think it's important to try and put the problem in perspective and realize that no, North Korea does not have the capability of, say, another state like Russia. It's still has a very small nuclear arsenal.
Evolving, developing, and so forth.
But it is moving forward in developing its capabilities, and one of the goals that we should try and set ourselves is to try and limit, insofar as possible, this development. Now, the question is, how do you do that? And that's a whole other question that we've been trying to do for.
Well, let's go to that. And for instance, we, meaning the United States, has been trying to limit that or slow that development, and we've done that through attempts at various kinds of sanctions through the United Nations. Sanctions work?
Again, I mean that really depends how you. The goal that you attribute to sanctions. If you consider that sanctions are meant to stop the program, then they have failed. Now, if you think, I think this is what I believe, that sanctions are meant to limit, stall, and delay the development of North Korea's capabilities, they have been successful because they have managed to do that. Now, it hasn't prevented North Korea from developing its capabilities, but they at least have had some limited success.
Okay, so we've had a policy in this country for as long as I can remember, having to do with North Korea, that something like thou shalt not have nuclear capability on the Korean Peninsula. And the argument has always been for a nuclear-free Korean Peninsula.
Right.
And while there is some disagreement in Washington over North Korea's nuclear missile capability, does it seem to you now very clear that the U.S. policy vis-a-vis a nuclear-free North Korea has been a failure?
I think we have to acknowledge that, yes, it has been a failure. It has been a failure, in my mind, on 3 accounts. One is that North Korea has developed a robust nuclear, is on its way to develop a robust nuclear and a nuclear program.
So they are in the club.
They are moving to be a full-fledged nuclear armed state and trying to be accepted as such as well. That's one. 2 is that presumably because of their growing military capabilities, they have been increasingly belligerent. And in 2010, you'll remember that they sank a South Korean corvette.
They did that shelling of the Yeongpyeong Island, right?
Correct. That's another military provocation that you could say have been encouraged by their growing military capabilities because they're increasingly confident that they can actually control escalation. This has driven Japan and South Korea from being increasingly nervous about North Korea's capability. So that's the second angle to that. And the third one is the problem of proliferation, the fact that it's been difficult to contain what North Korea is doing and selling to others as well.
Well, you say that North Korea is on its way to developing a robust nuclear program. And when we come back from the break, let's talk about what does that really mean?
Okay.
Stay with us, folks. We've got more with David Santoro of Pacific Forum after the break.
760 KGU.
Part of the Wall Street Business Network.
Conditions normal if you're going east to Hawaii Kai or over to the windward side. Our slowest traffic right now is coming in from the west. The H1 is stop and go at the east end of the airport viaduct. The Moanalua is stop and go when you get down to Moanalua Gardens. H1 is going to be very slow from Middle Street to the Punahou exit. If you're going west, expect the usual slowdowns on both the H1 and the Moanalua on the way to the stadium.
They all report to. Clapper was the guy who had to come out after the president basically refuted what the congressman read. He had to come out in some way, CYA or some way defuse the issue by saying, well, this was classified, it should have never been read, rather than, he didn't say one way or the other whether he believed it or he believed the president. But Clapper, the director of national intelligence, according to the news reports you read, and I only read 2 of them, Clapper, the director of national intelligence, wasn't the guy testifying. It was a question by
Pacific Forum CSIS is a nonprofit, nonpartisan foreign policy organization affiliated with the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. From right here in Honolulu, Pacific Forum has, since 1975, provided analysis on current and emerging political, economic, business, and security issues for leaders throughout the U.S. and Asia. Also, the Pacific Forum Young Leaders Program brings young professionals and next-generation leaders from around the U.S., Asia, and Europe together to observe and participate in high-level, multinational dialogues normally reserved for senior policy experts. To provide your support for the Young Leaders Program and to send future generation leaders abroad to ensure peace and prosperity in the Pacific, please contact Pacific Forum at 808-521-6745. That's 808-521-6745. Or you can visit them on the web at pacforum.org. That's pacforum.org.
Your product is selling well locally, so why export? Because 95% of all consumers live in foreign markets. Why not expand your market and increase your sales with help from the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone, your hub of international trade in Hawaii? The Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone offers you the services and support you need to start, grow, and...
Hi there, Charlie Goodwin is on the phone.
on the web at www.ftz9.org.
We are back, we are live, and we're talking about the Asia-Pacific region. Do we now have a nuclear arms race underway? And before we get back with David Santoro of Pacific Forum, one quick correction made for the prior section that we were talking about in this show, that James Clapper is the Director of National Intelligence and not the Director of the CIA. So no need call in on that. But I understand that we do have a caller online. Is that person available?
I'm here.
Could you give us your first name, sir?
Sure, it's Charlie.
And Charlie, where are you calling from?
Hawaii Kai.
Hawaii Kai. Okay, what's your question?
Yeah, here. Well, just a couple of quick observations. Listening to the show, we know by their tests that North Korea has some nuclear capability. No question about that. The big question at this point is the delivery system. And you know, one thing that we might be overlooking is the fact that there are other ways to deliver a nuclear weapon than by an ICBM or a missile, number one.
Okay, other way. All right, good point.
Yeah. So, and then the other issue or thought that I have is, and maybe a question for your guest, is how much interaction do you think there is between North Korea and Iran on the nuclear development, and how are they complementing each other? And then finally, just an observation, it seems that China is really a key player here, and they've got a lot to lose in this potential race as well.
You know, Charlie, I think that I appreciate you calling in. You brought up some excellent points, and I'd like you to take David's answers offline and continue to listen to the program. And as we get into the final segment, if David hasn't answered those questions, then jump back on the line and call us back. Would you do that?
Sure, okay, thanks.
All right, thank you so much for calling. All right. David, before we continue, I want to take a short commercial message from the CEO of ThinkTech, Mr. Jay Fidel. And Jay, could you join us for a second? Are you online?
Yes, I'm here, David. Commercial's not exactly right. It's just to go further about what we're doing, okay? Right. So remember that ThinkTech live streams all of its talk shows live on the internet. We put streaming video on Ustream and streaming audio on Spreaker.com. If you want to catch us live, these video and audio streams are available on our website. Check them out on thinktechhawaii.com. Remember, too, that we have a gallery here in the studio for a live audience, and you can come down and be a member of that audience, and we do have people sitting here in many of our shows. You can pose questions to our guests. You can participate in the discussion. So to reserve your place, write to me, jay@fidel.com. Thanks, David. Back to you.
All right, great. Remember, that's jay@fidel.com to join our studio audience. So, David, let's go back now and continue our discussion here. And this particular caller that called in a moment ago mentioned the connection between North Korea, Iran, and Syria, and you know that. So let me ask you a two-part question. The first part is, what is that connection?
Okay, well, from a U.S. perspective, the most serious threat is actually what we call onward proliferation from North Korea. That is the ability or willingness of North Korea to actually sell nuclear technology or nuclear material to third actors. And this is of worry to the United States because this could eventually fall into the hands of terrorists and others with intentions of actually using these capabilities. Now, we know that Pyongyang actually sold nuclear technology to Syria and helped Syria develop plutonium separation plants. So that connection is real and clear.
Okay.
There have been allegations about North Korea and Iran collaborations on nuclear and missile technologies. These are allegations, and I mean, again, we don't know whether they have been, they are real or not, but there are very deep suspicions that they exist.
The last nuclear test that North Korea conducted, was it a enriched uranium bomb or a plutonium bomb, or do we know?
We don't know.
And what's the difference?
Well, for a start, we know it's a nuclear test by virtue of the yield of the impact. We are unable to identify whether or not it's a plutonium or highly enriched uranium test because you need to be able to detect what we call noble gases in the atmosphere, and we haven't been able to do that. Does it matter from a strictly technical point? No, it doesn't matter. If we had been able to detect whether or not this was a uranium test, then this would have suggested that North Korea has an active uranium program.
Let's go to this point that was raised by the caller from Hawaii Kai, that you don't need an ICBM to deliver a nuclear weapon. And in fact, you could use a bomber or smuggle it across the border or some other technique. Does Iran have a guided missile capability?
It has missile capabilities.
So it is possible if those two countries are working together, Iran and North Korea, that even if North Korea is not as advanced as Iran in guided missile technology, that the delivery vehicle could come from Iran and the weapon could come from North Korea. Yes?
You can envision such a scenario, like where you have basically collaborations between missile technology and nuclear technology. That's a connection.
This whole business about North Korea in the Asia-Pacific region now approaching or becoming a member of the nuclear club, depending on how you want to define it. You've pointed out that it has given them almost a bulletproof sense of security, is that they could do other conventional attacks, which they did last year, I believe it was, or 2010, with the sinking of the Chonan and the shelling of Yongpyong Island in South Korea. So you get this bulletproofing of the regime type concept by developing your nuclear capability.
Or at least what they perceive as being bulletproof. But yes.
Okay. And then the other piece of this has been this incredible media development, hype, rhetoric that North Korea has been engaged in, which almost operates like an infomercial for its own weapons sales, arms sales, and so forth. I mean, do you see that happening?
I mean, yes. What a PR event! What they're doing, and the fact that they, showing off their capability is a way to say, look, we have this technology. They're not saying they're prepared to actually sell it. On the contrary, actually, they're saying that they're ready to embrace non-proliferation. They will not proliferate. But at the same time, the fact that they're showing the missile capabilities and that they are nuclear armed states is, has to catch the attention of potential proliferators.
And so those could be rogue nations. It could be Iran, Syria, and maybe other organizations that are not nation states.
It could be, absolutely. It could be terrorists.
Boy, what an incredible series of developments, because there's more to this than just this North Korea firing off a missile. It kind of spreads out like you throw a pebble into a lake and little ripples throughout the whole region there.
Right, and I mean, the onward proliferation aspect that you just mentioned is actually quite concerning because there's no way to easily counter it. When you mentioned potential escalation from military provocation, but at the same time, in this case, you have the U.S. extended deterrence, actually preventing North Korea from escalating to higher level of provocation, or even from transforming these military provocations into a war or even a nuclear war. When it comes to onward proliferation, countering this is much more difficult because it's almost invisible.
It's almost that the example has been set and others quietly follow.
You could say that.
Okay. Let's go to another point that the caller from Hawaii Kai raised, and that has to do with China and the implications of all of this on China. And we'll deal with that when we come back after the break, okay?
Okay.
Stay with us. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
760 KGU.
Part of the Wall Street Business Network.
Accidents right now on Kapiolani Boulevard at Market City, on Ke'emoku in front of the McDonald's, and we have one downtown at Beretania and Punchbowl. Going west, the H1 is now backed up on the west end of the airport viaduct. The Moanalua slows at Moanalua Gardens. Really slow coming in from the west. Both freeways stop and go approaching the Middle Street merge. No problems out to Hawaii Kai, and we're normal to the windward side.
Right.
And so their question is, where is the red line? At what point, now that we know that they have capability and intent,
Right.
at what point do we stop just standing by and trying to be defensive? At what point do we go nuclear if the U.S. won't act? Or do we take preemptive action?
Right.
And
I think that's actually yeah.
And you know what's really good about that, Kerry, is it puts Japan almost in the position of Israel.
Right.
It's the Asia version of Israel vis-a-vis Iran.
Yeah, and that's true in South Korea as well.
Interesting. Okay.
I think that
Give me a few minutes, a minute or two to set the stage.
Hawaii, the state of clean energy, is also brought to you by Hawaiian Electric Company, powering the growth and development of Hawaii since it was chartered by King Kalakaua in 1891. Today, Hawaiian Electric and its subsidiaries, Maui Electric and Hawaii Electric Light Company, serve more than 95% of our state, providing reliable electric service essential to our quality of life. The Hawaiian Electric companies are also leading our transition to clean energy. By increasing our renewable energy use and improving energy efficiency, we're reducing Hawaii's dependence on imported oil and providing a more sustainable and secure future for Hawaii. For more information, visit hawaiisenergyfuture.com.
We are back. We are live, and you can call us at area code 808-296-5467. This is the Wall Street Business Network, 760 KGU AM radio. And we're talking with David Santoro of the Pacific Forum. David is a senior fellow for non-proliferation and disarmament at Pacific Forum, CSIS. And before we get back on our topic having to do with the nuclear arms race in the region, I want to bring on ThinkTech CEO, Mr. Jay Fidel.
Well, this discussion makes me think about the bridge to Asia, David.
Why is that?
We are trying to illuminate the bridge to Asia so everyone in Hawaii will understand its relevance to us and our relevance to it. So we have a program on April 25th, that's a week from today, called Hawaii's Growing Financial Connection with Asia, and how we can make it grow all the faster. April 25th at the Plaza Club. It's a luncheon program, so it begins at 11:30 for lunch, and then the program itself is at 12 o'clock to 1:30. So we understand Hawaii is the bridge to Asia. Can Hawaii be on that bridge? Can we play an important role on that bridge? We do have strong financial connections with Asia. In this program, we're going to examine them, illuminate them, and talk about how we can improve them. So we'll have Varian Allen as the moderator. We'll have Stephen Connell, Roger Epstein, Brad Punu, and we'll have David Day on the panel there. If you want to see this program, Hawaii's growing financial connection with Asia and how we can make it grow all the faster, sign up at hvca.org. Come down and see David Day in the flesh. Thanks, David. Back to you.
Wow.
Ralph,
All right.
Ross on line 1.
I'm sorry?
Caller on line 1.
Okay, we've got another caller here, David. So if you don't mind, let's see what's happening here. Who's on line 1?
David.
Who am I speaking
Hi,
with?
it's Ralph Costa.
Ralph Costa
from Korea.
South Korea. Well, Ralph, it's great to have you on the show here.
Annyeonghaseyo. Thank you.
It's great to have you here. What now that we got you on the phone, Ralph? We are talking about the broader implications of the nuclear developments in North Korea, what it means for the region and so forth. You're sitting there in South Korea. Give us a thumbnail sketch of how you see things and what are the ramifications of what's going on.
Well, here it's sort of ho-hum.
Ho-hum.
Nobody is particularly excited about all of the North Korean threats. There's sort of North Korea fatigue. So there aren't a lot of people that are, worried about an imminent danger. That's the good news. The bad news from a proliferation standpoint is that 70+% of South Koreans now believe that they should either have their own nuclear weapons or that the U.S. should deploy nuclear weapons to South Korea or both. And this, of course, is a big concern, and it's driven by frustration over having to put up with this little pipsqueak in the North who constantly makes these threats that the South is essentially unable to respond to.
Frustration, pipsqueak, so that the Ralph, this ties right into the topic that David has been talking about here, that this whole series of rhetoric building in North Weria and the threats and so forth and are really generating waves of potential proliferation throughout the region and will have serious ramifications on with our allies. And you see that in the flesh right there, I take it.
Yeah, I think that's true, David. And the other concern, of course, and this is very much on the administration's mind, is how we deal with this can have an even more important implication.
What do you mean?
The North Koreans are insisting that we sort of treat them as a nuclear weapon state and come back and have discussions about arms control on their terms. Were we to do this, it would essentially signal to every other rogue state on Earth, and even some not-so-rogue states, that the way you get respect and attention is by pursuing nuclear weapons. So a lot of people say, why doesn't the U.S. just sit down, accept that they have nuclear weapons, and go forward? But the regional and global implications for that could be very serious.
Ralph, let me ask you a question. We are at a juncture here, it seems to me, and we'll get David to weigh in on this, but clearly it looks like there has been a multi-year policy failure of the United States to denuclearize the peninsula there. What is your view of how should the policy change? How do we deal with this problem?
Well, I'm probably a little kinder on the administration than apparently David has been. It's not like there was some easy solution out there. We're dealing with the North Koreans. The North Koreans are hell-bent on developing nuclear weapons, and they've got a safety blanket in the fact that the Chinese seem to allow them to get away with a lot of misbehavior without clamping down on them economically and without tightening the screws on sanctions and all of that. So, to call a policy a failure, you have to have a better idea in mind. And the reality is no one has a better idea in mind on how to deal with the North Koreans. I've been working on this for 40 years, and I can give you a long, long list of all the things that haven't worked. So we've got a pretty good feel for that. But no one has come up with something that has worked. So, we got to keep trying. We got to keep pressure on them, and we got to keep pressuring the Chinese to play a much more constructive role in all of this.
Well, one of the I guess as an outsider, one of the important functions that I see Pacific Forum filling is that perhaps you, Ralph, with your years of expertise and the very, very brilliant fellows that you have associated with Pacific Forum, maybe in the months or years to come, it's Pacific Forum that will develop the policy that will be lead the way to the future. And so there's your challenge.
Well, thank you, David. I mean, we're sort of trying to address that. We're bringing in a lot of young, fresh minds, but one of the freshest minds that we have on this problem is not so young, and that's our founder, Joe Vasey, who's now 96 years old young and has actually developed a mini Marshall Plan for North Korea with both incentives and consequences. But for his plan to work, there has to be credibility on the consequences, and that's again why we need to have the Chinese step up and be a little more forthcoming.
I see. Okay.
So the plan is there. Now we just need to get the participants to play along.
Well, we'll have to think about developing a show for the benefit of the public in the future on the mini Marshall Plan for North Korea that Joe Vasey and Pacific Forum have been developing, because it sounds fascinating to me, and I'm sure our audience would love to hear more about this.
Well, good, David. I'm going to have to sign off because I'm at the Korean Foreign Ministry right now and have to go into another meeting. So good to talk to you, though, and I'll turn it back over to you and our David.
All right, and thank you for calling, Ralph, and good luck with the Korean Foreign Ministry.
Great.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, talk about a phone call in the middle of the ripple there.
Right. Right. Well, on the question of whether or not we have failed, for a start, I think that everyone's failed, and not one particular administration has failed. We've all failed over the years. I mean, if you look at, over the past 20 years.
Failure is not a derogatory term.
No,
it's just like Thomas Edison. There were a lot of failures before he got to the light bulb, an awful lot.
Right. I mean, it's just looking at the way things have developed. The fact is that North Korea has developed nuclear and missile capabilities, that U.S. allies are more nervous, that North Korea has been increasingly more provocative, that yes, it has engaged in proliferation activities. Now, I completely agree that had you stopped that, where is the red line, is a problem that no one has a viable solution to. But at the same time, I think we need to try and look at things objectively. We have failed from
Okay. I got you. And I think that it's interesting that our caller from Hawaii Kai, Charlie, put his finger on the China challenge, and as did Ralph Casa, and in a nutshell, what is the challenge that this whole nuclear proliferation issue has resulted in on the China side of the equation? What's the problem there?
China has considerable influence over North Korea, and as Ralph has mentioned, it could encourage or pressure North Korea from actually stopping what it's doing.
Okay.
Now, it's not doing that for several reasons. First, because obviously North Korea is a buffer state and prevents Korea from actually being unified with U.S. forces on its border. that's one of the reasons why China has been reluctant to actually put pressure on Pyongyang from stopping its activities.
Up until this time, China has been complaining about the United States' extended deterrence with using its nuclear capability to effectively restrain South Korea, U.S. allies South Korea and Japan. And now, as a consequence of North Korea at least having 1 foot into the nuclear club, accept it or not, we can see from Ralph's call that the South Korean public opinion is now pushing very hard to forget about the extended deterrence from the U.S. We want our own weapons, right?
Well, increasingly there have been calls about developing nuclear weapons in South Korea and in Japan. Actually, increasingly, you hear this. Now, what this suggests, I mean, if you look at it from a Chinese perspective, would be that China has interest in pushing North Korea in pressuring North Korea to stop its activities.
Because if they don't?
Because if they don't, then you could envision South Korea and Japan developing nuclear weapons, which would be 2 U.S. allies with nuclear weapons on China's doorstep.
And this is precisely the pebble in the lake ripples that we talked about earlier in the program. Was spreading within the Asia-Pacific region, and it goes on and on and on. We want to take some questions from our studio audience when we come back after the break on some of the ripple effect that this is occurring in Japan. So stay with us, and we'll be back shortly.
760 KGU.
Part of the Wall Street Business Network.
A couple of new accidents have been reported out west on Fort Weaver Road at Colowaka Drive and in town Ke'emoku near the McDonald's. Inbound traffic on the freeways from the west unusually slow this afternoon, partly due to an earlier accident at the Vineyard Boulevard exit. H1 is backed up before the exits on the airport viaduct. The Moanalua slows at Moanalua Gardens. Going west, the H1 slows halfway down the airport viaduct, the Moanalua at the Gardens.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think it's good. Oh, yeah, no, I mean...
He's told me that I won't change my views anyway, but he's told me that, there are certain things that he said he doesn't agree with me on, but go ahead and stick to my guns.
Yeah, no, I'm but I'm guessing this is also probably why he's called a bit.
No. He was set up in advance.
Oh, was he set? Oh, okay, I didn't see that. Okay.
David and Ralph have been communicating about him.
Okay.
Calling in to add, from the front lines.
Right.
Because he was in South Korea, but I really wasn't sure that he was actually going to do it because he said he was running between things when this occurred, and so I was pleased and thrilled that he could do that, and he happened. He hit right in the.
This was actually good timing because that's when we got into.
Not yet. You have your microphone shut off, right?
It's off. Yeah.
Okay.
ThinkTech always brings unparalleled media depth to its programs, and our show Asia in Review is no exception. The Thursday Asia Business and Foreign Policy shows here on ThinkTech are hosted by David Day, a well-known international lawyer with extensive experience in the business and geopolitical issues of the Asia-Pacific region. Come join David as ThinkTech illuminates Hawaii's bridge to Asia with fascinating and lively discussions, featuring experts who unwind the critical issues and then probe for the solutions. Asia in Review with David Day.
Hawaii, the state of clean energy, is also brought to you by the State Energy Office of the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism. How can we secure a better future for Hawaii? One way is clean energy. And the State Energy Office is steering Hawaii to that clean energy future. Hawaii is rich with natural renewable resources, the sun, the wind, the ocean, and the land. And they are all being tapped to meet Hawaii's clean energy initiatives to generate electricity, create jobs, spur economic growth, and reduce our dependence on imported foreign oil. To learn more, visit energy.hawaii.gov.
We are back, we are live, and we are talking about the potential for nuclear arms race developing here in the Asia-Pacific region with Pacific Forum's David Santoro, a senior fellow for non-proliferation and disarmament. We've had an explosive program so far, and it's going to get even more explosive as we go along here. Let me remind our audience that you can join the conversation, as a number of people have, by calling area code 808-296-5467. There's more to this North Korea issue than Kim Jong-un just threatening to fire and devastation on American cities, on Hawaii, on the other continents of Asia with a nuclear holocaust. There is this ripple effect that David Santoro has been talking about in terms of nuclear proliferation, and we just had a phone call from Pacific Forum's Ralph Casa from South Korea talking about the public opinion developments in South Korea that they now want their own weapons. It's not enough to have the U.S. nuclear umbrella. And as Jay Fidel mentioned earlier, you can participate here in our programs by joining our studio audience by contacting ThinkTech at jay@fidel.com. Is that right, Jay? Or Jay? Yeah, there we go. We got it. I got a thumbs up on that one. And in that connection, we do have a studio audience here. And so let me go to our studio audience member, one of them, Carrie, who's here in the audience with us. Carrie, you're from where?
I'm from Honolulu, and we're sitting here in Honolulu, which is about a 25-minute missile flight from North Korea. So we've got a little bit of time to think about it and respond from Hawaii. But I just came back from 2 weeks in Japan, where I visited 7 cities and was talking with many people about Japan-America security issues. And while I was there, it was pretty fascinating to see the response to North Korea's threats. North Korea told Japan, you are in our crosshairs as #1 target.
Carrie, are the Japanese responding differently than Ralph Casa's explanation a few minutes ago on the phone, as that the North Koreans are very nonchalant and they're not really terribly concerned, except that they want nuclear weapons? The South Koreans.
There's responses at several levels, and one was to see the self-defense forces in placing PAC-3 anti-missile defenses on baseball fields in Tokyo, and the deployment of their Aegis destroyers to the Sea of Japan, or the East Sea. So they're taking prudent moves, as they put it. We have a stated intent by North Korea, and we have a capability. The missiles are proven. The Taepodong missiles from North Korea can hit Japan. And in their minds, there is a proven capability and a stated intent to attack Japan.
Okay.
So at the national level, they're taking prudent steps to defend their country, as they're entitled to do and as they should be doing as a legitimate government. Now, on the streets of those 7 cities where I was, Kyoto, Tokyo, Fukuoka, Nagasaki, and other cities, you don't see panic. You don't see people who are visibly worried. But when you talk to those who are in the know, those who are seriously concerned about security issues, the questions they have are along the lines of the questions you've been addressing here. At what point do we take action? How long do we sit here in the threat? Year after year, the analysts are saying, well, the North Koreans don't have blank capability. They don't have a missile that can deliver. They don't have one that's reliable.
They don't have a guidance
and every
system.
year the North Koreans hit another milestone along the way of being able to accurately take out targets with nuclear weapons or to disseminate nuclear weapons through terrorist organizations. So a question that I'm asking you is, what's the red line? Should the United States be working with the UN or be working with its allies to set a red line where, okay, this far and no further North Korea? Because what Ralph talked about, the South Koreans saying we need our own nuclear capability, that same discussion's going on in Japan. At what point can we no longer depend on the United States? Do we need to take action on our own? So I'll leave that question with you. Should there be a red line, and what is the red line?
Thank you so much, Kerry. David, what do you think? I mean, that's an incredible...
I think this is the key question. I mean, can we have a red line? Should we have a red line? And if so, should we actually tell the North Koreans this is the red line? And the problem with red lines is when you draw a red line, then you have to be able to follow through once that red line is crossed. And
you're talking consequences now.
Exactly. Like,
okay.
If we say, all right, well, you will conduct another test and we will take this or that action, we have to be sure that we are able and willing to take that action. And that's why the whole concept of deterrence has remained vague about what these red lines, I would use red lines more so than red line, are.
How about red mush?
Well, maybe maybe that's a new concept we should introduce in the deterrent lexicon. Right. Yeah, I think that would probably work better. But I mean, that's the problem. I think this is a key question. But really, I mean,
that's a great question.
It's difficult. I think going forward, we're probably more likely to see greater coordination among the U.S. and its allies to extend alliance coordination to be able to respond to North Korean provocations. But I don't think that you'll see very clear red lines being drawn as red lines not to cross for the reasons I've described. I think one example back in the mid-2000s, what the United States made clear is that North Korea will not and should not spread its nuclear technology and materials to third actors, and that this was a very strong red line,
red
mush that it shouldn't cross, and eventually that line was crossed. So, and our ability to actually respond to that crossing is null, really. So, going forward, as I said, greater alliance coordination is probably what you're going to end up seeing. Just one point of clarification: in South Korea, I think that's what Ralph was saying, is you have 70% of the public actually calling for manufacture of nuclear weapons. The elites still are reluctant to actually going forward. You've got a growing number of politicians and elite members that are calling for the manufacture of nuclear weapons, but it's really the public that's calling for nuclear weapons.
This excellent question that Kerry brought up about the need for a red line. What you are hesitating on, David, which is okay, I understand that, is the concept of the ability or willingness to do a follow-through if there's a violation. And maybe it's going to take a nuclear accident, or maybe it's going to take some city taken out before there is a red line with some rather dramatic consequences.
Right.
A willingness to actually act instead of the red mush.
Right.
I don't know.
And that's why you have, in addition to the calls for manufacture of nuclear weapons in Korea and Japan, you have increasingly calls for manufacture of offensive or preemptive strike options in both countries to be able to actually preemptively take out North Korea's military assets.
Kerry, you brought up a very important point here about the red line, and David talking about consequences. And that is a very critical piece of the North Korea Marshall Plan that I gather from Ralph Casa that Joe Vasey and Pacific Forum have been working on. And I would like to talk about having some further exploration of this Marshall Plan for North Korea in the future, because I find that fascinating, because the consequences piece will have to be addressed. And I think that was the point that Ralph has made.
That's right.
Kerry, you're making that as well, and David. And
I mean, if I may, the consequences is important for the point that Ralph mentioned earlier. It's a legitimacy problem. If you don't take actions as North Korea moves forward in its development, then the credibility of the entire non-proliferation regime is at stake globally. Yeah, because it's basically sending the wrong message. It's saying, well, as Ralph mentioned, just move forward, and then you'll be accepted as
Well, this has been a wonderful discussion, David, and I appreciate you coming down here. And Carrie in our studio audience, thank you for your wonderful comment and contribution here. This is Pacific Forum's Issues and Insights, and every Thursday here, we do address international issues right here on ThinkTech Hawaii. You all have a safe drive home.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Good night.